Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Wednesday. Welcome to the Restaurants Canada webinar, Cost Savings by Going Cashless. My name is Roberto Sargiu, Director of Marketing and Communications here at Restaurants Canada, and I'll be your moderator today. As you know, margins for profitability in the restaurant industry have always been thin. Restaurateurs have had to be resourceful to keep expenses low, stretch ingredients, and make the most of labor costs. With sanitation and personal hygiene protocols now in place due to COVID, finding ways to reduce costs has become more crucial than ever. It's no longer about gaining profit in some cases, it's about fighting to break even. But there's an untapped cost savings opportunity you won't really see on your P&L. Today, you'll learn why going cashless should be your top priority to reduce operating costs in 2020, saving you time, money, and the health risks of handling cash. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. From XTM, Tipstoday, CEO, Marilyn Schaefer. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks so much for being here. And VP of Sales and for Hospitality, Dylan. Pleasure to meet you, Dylan.
Nice to see you, Roberto.
Great to see you again, too. Thank you guys both so much for being here today. Before we get started, just want to let you know that for those who are attendees who are here, you can submit your questions by typing into the question area of your control panel, and we'll get them, and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can as we get to the Q&A. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available in a few days for our participants, and you'll be sent a link to the webpage. Finally, if you'd like to follow along, if you're on Twitter or Instagram, you can do so. We are live tweeting on Twitter at restaurantsca. Once again, that's at restaurantsca, or catch our Instagram stories at Restaurants Canada. With that said, I'd like to turn it over to the Tipstoday team to kick us off. Marilyn, Dylan, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, I'm Marilyn, and I'm the CEO of XTM. XTM is a global fintech company that launched Tipstoday, which is a cashless tip-out solution for the hospitality industry. And, you know, I'm an entrepreneur like most of you here, and it's always been my personal goal to have a company, own a company. Well, I don't own it anymore because it's publicly traded, but to run a company that creates growth and opportunities for best-in-class businesses and for the people who run them. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about Tipstoday, is I really believe that we're disrupting the operations of a restaurant in a way that is going to benefit and is benefiting restaurants that choose to use it. And so I'm going to introduce our rock star, Dylan, new dad, and VP of Sales at XTM.
Thank you, Marilyn. Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan Erlinson, and I'd like to extend a huge thank you as well to all the restaurant partners that have joined us today. I think just the fact that we're all making steps and strides to better our restaurant business during the pandemic is a testament to how unbelievably resilient and amazing restaurant people truly are. And changes that happen today in 2020 will better the future of restaurants for generations to come. Just to tell you a little bit about myself before we get going, I have a background in the restaurant industry for the last 15 so years. My path in restaurants went from washing dishes to chef school, then back to school for hospitality and wine, and finally becoming the maitre d' of one of Canada's most recognized hospitality groups here in Toronto. That was definitely one of the highlights in my career. I've had the honor of helping to open many restaurants from Toronto to Miami and South Beach, and I've learned a lot of best practices along the way. Because I've worked in the trenches with waiters, servers, chefs, and other staff, I understand the need for on-demand pay and a cashless solution. I chose to join XTM because I saw that a cashless solution had the potential to really improve both the operational processes of restaurants and the financial stability of their staff. So with today's webinar, we're going to learn why going cashless should be your top priority to reduce operating costs in 2020 during this global pandemic. So before we look into why our digital platform for restaurants will improve your profit margins in the modern day ecosystem, we must first look at the entire landscape. Now, where do our opportunities lie and how can we execute them? So margins for profitability in the restaurant industry have always been razor thin. We all know that. Restaurateurs have had to be resourceful to keep expenses low, stretching ingredients and making the most of their labor costs. And over the years, we have figured out the deficiencies that eat at our profit within the hospitality space and we produce solutions such as these. So we look at ingredients like that would otherwise go bad and make them into something great to add to our menu, like avocados, for instance. They turn brown and oxidize in the air. We can make them into guacamole to extend that product's shelf life so it doesn't go to waste. Or scheduling employees. We know that having every hourly employee start their shift at the same time doesn't work, so we stagger start times during peak hours to improve our labor lines. Or even overhead. We know that owning a property as opposed to renting increases our margins for fixed costs. So now on the topic of costs, let's take a closer look at them. As I mentioned, we are all in a thin margin business. Restaurants are simply one of the toughest ventures that an entrepreneur can decide to sink their teeth into and their capital in a world where the average net profits have dwindled down from anywhere between 4 to 8%. Costs need to be kept in check to avoid eating away at the potential for profit. But this chart reflects pre-COVID profit modeling. We're in a completely different operating world now. Your profitability model needs to adjust to this new reality, this new normal, because success pre-COVID doesn't necessarily translate into post-COVID success. So with the sanitation and personal hygiene protocols in place due to COVID, we almost need a whole other category of expenses. As you see here, finding ways to reduce costs become more crucial than ever. It's no longer about gaining profit, but it's about fighting just to break even. We may not have pennies anymore in circulation in Canada, but when it comes to profit modeling, we need to shave every single cent that is considered an expense. So where should we turn to for ways to cut back? So most would agree that we pull out our P&L and comb through it and look for creative ways that we can kind of cut back. And we ask ourselves, can we get away with a few less staff working on the floor to lower our labor lines? Can we renegotiate with the vendors who drop off our fruits and vegetables to promote some cost control on the supplies? Or are my expenses reduced to the max already? In that case, can we make them go further by making changes to the menu or reusing items or even cutting dishes with one-off ingredients? The truth is, though, that sometimes the answers to reducing costs and becoming more efficient can't necessarily be seen on your P&L statement. Think back 20 years ago, getting orders from waitstaff to the kitchen. Maybe POS systems were already standard when you opened up your restaurant, but there was a time when it was a very manual process to take an order. So handwritten tickets were difficult to read, the extra trips to the kitchen slowed down service customizations, on menu items weren't even tracked, and restaurant owners started to realize that it was costing them a lot of money. So the Squirrels, the Touch Bistros, and the Micros of the world, they came along and they revolutionized the communication between the front of house and the back of house. And it was a change in process that needed to happen, something that now we could never live without. They needed to communicate between kitchen, the waitstaff, and the accounting department, and a digital tool helped them to do it. So it wasn't until they looked for ways to work smarter that they realized that this cost-saving opportunity, now is the time to do it again. So what other processes are in place in our restaurants that would be more efficient if we had a digital tool? Processes that touch on the three things that matter most right now: health and safety, giving my staff immediate access to their tips because they're down and out too, and cutting my operating costs. So one such decision is going cashless with staff tips. It's a paradigm switch for sure that has taken place all across the country with some of Canada's most highly respected hospitality groups. So the current way to pay out your staff tips. So how are staff tips currently being handled in our restaurants today? Let's dive into that process and take a look to identify its inefficiencies. Most of your customers pay with digital money, whether that's debit, credit, your Visa, MasterCard, or a gift card. That means when it comes to adding a tip to the bill, more often than not, they hit 15, 18, or 20%, and they do it with the same method of payment. So essentially, your POS system has been accepting your staff's gratuities for a very long time, and your record of those tips are very digital too. But when it comes to paying out those tips, many are still using an old, antiquated, analog process to do so. So everybody knows this process. You go to the bank to make sure you have enough cash to pay back the due-backs. You check your records to confirm the amounts owed to each staff member, counting and double counting the cash in the safe owed to each employee, labeling names on the envelopes, and then stuffing the envelopes with hopefully the right amounts. So this multi-step sort of process is slowing you down. It's taking your managers off the floor, taking up a lot of time, and it's not even time being spent on something that will grow your business, which means it's time that isn't really being invested properly. And we'll break down just actually how much this wasted time is costing you in a few more moments. The other problem is that the risk for discrepancies. So counting physical cash causes room for error, right? So it's easy to miscount, bills can get stuck together, and theft risks are high. Not to mention, staff can claim they didn't even receive the right amount of money in their envelope, and sometimes staff claim that they didn't even get their tips at all. So many managers are finding themselves handling staff issues during service related to payment disputes every week. And this is despite the fact that according to most provincial legislations here in Canada and in the US, managers aren't even supposed to handle the cash in the first place. So there are a few more things involved in this process. And now we look at the current ways to pay out the staff tip. So in an effort to keep a tight rein on your tip outs and avoid disputes, you end up keeping a record of who's picked up their tips, and it usually gets tracked on some spreadsheet, right, that isn't always accurate and things get missed. So paying out your staff tips and your gratuities in cash or check turns the payment of their earned tips back into an analog process. So we have to look at managing your business, and it includes managing your books. In order to keep your eyes on your profit, record keeping is invaluable. I think we all know this. Mixing analog and digital data is a recipe for error. You have everything come in digitally, but then you're faced to go back and count 20s, and maybe a 20 goes this way or a 20 goes that way. Whether you personally spend time reconciling accounts or you pay an accountant, things need to be efficient to keep your profits in check. So we're going to look at sort of the do-back dilemma. Because we discussed the alternatives, we must first break down why do-backs are such a dilemma in the first place. So let's first consider your employees. They work really hard to provide great hospitality, to earn their gratuities, but getting those funds into the hands is a long process, especially right now when they need the money the most, meaning they need to wait too long to get that cash. The restaurant industry has been hit the hardest. We all know that, absolutely the hardest. Everybody that's on this webinar is one of the most resilient people in Canada for what we've been through. And during the global pandemic, including the employees who make up your team, now more than ever, your employees need immediate access to their money, so instant daily pay. But let's walk you through a typical do-back cycle. So Lexi is one of our team members here, and the guest pays using credit card and leaves Lexi a $33 tip. At the end of the day, Lexi is owed $162 in tips, left for by guests who paid her digitally. Other staff members are owed their tips as well. A total of $1,274, let's call it, in tips was earned by all of the staff that day. So with little to no cash coming in, paying the do-backs will require a trip to the bank to pick up the cash. We all know that you're going to wait in line, you have to wear a mask, you have to be off the floor. Is your restaurant going to be okay while you're away? And because of this, Lexi and the rest of the team must wait till do-backs day to receive their tips, and that might be the following week. So now from an operating perspective, it only makes sense that you wouldn't want to make a trip to the bank every single day. So let the staff tips accumulate, and at the end of the week, I'll get to it. But that means that at the end of the week, a total of, let's say, $9,000 or $8,962, for example, needs to be withdrawn from the bank. But picking up thousands of dollars in cash, I used to do it, is a major risk. Some pay an armored truck company to pick up the delivered cash. Other restaurants put that on the operator. Either way, it's a kind of a security risk, and no one really wants the burden of having to do it. But nonetheless, everybody does it because the work still has to get done, and one bank trip is made and staff receive their tips on due-back day. Now, when that day comes, due-back amounts are confirmed for each staff member. Cash is going to be counted, envelopes are stuffed and labeled and tasked, and that takes that manager hours and hours to complete. I'm sure everybody's been there. A record is kept to make sure each staff member picked up their tips, and then lastly, the accounts reporting needs to be done in order to keep your books in order for your accounting, which means you need to reconcile the total dollar amounts and tips that you batched that were collected by digital payments from your POS and compare that to how much money was withdrawn from the account when your manager went to the bank, and then confirm that the right dollar amounts went to the right staff and blah, blah, blah. But when your managers pay out the tips, it's almost hell on earth each week, and it keeps repeating itself week after week after week. But because this process is so time consuming, your staff are waiting longer than they need to for their tips. It might not have been an urgent problem pre-pandemic, but as you know all too well, your staff need quicker access to their money, and we can do better to help them if we're able to improve their cash flow. So it always comes down to what's it going to save me, and what am I burning? What type of money am I spending on this? So now if we look at this scenario from the other side, the operating perspective, we can see how costs add up to real dollars. You may not have realized it, but there are two major costs you're paying by handling staff tips and cash. The logistics cost you time away from your business, and the fees related to cash deposits, discrepancies, whether in person or with the service company, are costing you profit as well. So think about this, for instance. Making the trip to the bank takes 2 hours a week. Counting up the dewbacks, double checking them, and labeling them takes 4 to 5 hours a week. Going back and forth to the safe, sometimes during service, costs you another hour in the week. And then checking in on the books to reconcile accounts requires you to open up your POS numbers, compare your account balances, trace your payments. That's another hour a week. So if we sum it all up, you're looking at a minimum of 9 hours each week that you're paying somebody. Let's, for instance, say $18 an hour. You're looking at $650 a month. And that doesn't include the bank deposit fees. You can use this model to calculate the exact number for your own restaurant, but when we start to see how this time adds up, and see a real dollar value attached to it, we realize that there's a lot of time and real money wasted on this old broken system. So now, if we didn't have enough reasons to consider going cashless, let's address the health and safety aspect. So Canada's guidelines around reopening are encouraging restaurants in Canada not to accept cash payments. If your business follows these recommendations, you won't have money on hand to continue paying your staff their tips in cash. And businesses who aren't putting cash restrictions are seeing customers favor contactless methods of payment regardless, so they're running into the same problem. But even once we find a vaccine for COVID and restrictions are lifted, hopefully very soon, we're still faced with the fact that money can reportedly carry more germs than a household toilet. According to a recent study conducted in New York City, researchers found microorganisms living on the surface of cash ranging from mouth and vaginal bacteria to flu-like viruses. Gross.
Ew.
So the World Health Organization has always recommended washing your hands after handling money, expressing concerns about the use of physical cash even before the pandemic. Finally, these are some of the problems that come along with handling cash. Unsatisfied employees, reconciliation, security risks, they all cost you profit, right? And we all know this, guys. Cash is not recommended. Getting cash isn't very quick, and petty cash frequently gets lost or goes unreconciled. How many times does somebody need to go out and run out and get lemons and limes because they forgot to do it on a Cisco order, and they grab 2 20s from the till, and then they come back and they forget to reconcile or bring back the receipt, and it gets lost and never accounted for? Those few cents can mean and turn out into dollars lost revenue over time. So, we've made the case for a digital solution or a cashless product. So now, how can we go cashless with our staff tips? There's some alternatives out there. Here's some look at some alternatives to cash payouts for tips. So there are a few options, but not all are ideal. You could e-transfer the amount to each staff member individually. We know some restaurants that do that, but that will cost you a fee per transfer. Not to mention there are no quick ways to do it in bulk. So you're not really able to save much time or money. The second option, you could write checks. You could go very old school and write a check instead of issuing a due back. Although you skip the trip to the bank, you still need to write individual checks, right? So labeling staff names and putting them into envelopes, you still won't see the savings of time or money, and you're still mixing digital data from your register with analog payouts. And the third option would be to add it to their payroll. So getting tips paid separately is part of the culture and tipping in the industry. The staff really rely on that money on a daily basis, the tips, and they're going to wait for their hourly to come bi-weekly. And many cannot afford to decrease week-to-week income as a result of upfront income tax reductions. Also, most payrolls are bi-weekly, and you're not really helping your staff very much when they're relying on day-to-day earnings accumulated from tips. None of these are really ideal. They are options because they do solve maybe a problem with cash, but they also don't, they only solve one aspect of it, and they don't really help the other. As we know, with POS terminals, that allows us to place orders in the kitchen. Going digital is not really so radical anymore in our industry. Digital tools help us to be more efficient by automating processes, and in more cases, they solve most than one problem for us. But we need one that will maximize profitability, and to do so, that, it needs to be two things. You need to save time, and you need to save money. So when it comes to saving you time, it must eliminate trips to the bank, it must take tip outs and make them quicker, allowing you to get that money into your staff pocket all at once. Definitely has to be minimal risk for errors and discrepancies, and it needs to make reconciling your books really quick and easy. When it comes to saving that $650 a month, an admin task we spoke about earlier, it needs to be free. So there are many cashless products out there, but we have one that is free. Tipstoday is a three-part solution, the app, the portal, and the card. It benefits the employer, benefits the employees with a convenient and secure alternative to cash, gratuities, and pay. Eliminating the chances for error and discrepancies, reconciliation is seamless, and you can keep count right to the penny. And the part that means the most to owners and operators is that we do not charge the restaurant any monthly or annual fees. This solution remains free to the business outside of the initial setup cost, which is just the cost of the physical debit card on the day of onboarding. The card is fully reloadable, and it sits in your wallet the same way any other debit card would today. So with the portal, operators or managers can view and export daily reports on the dashboard to keep track of payments and payouts. You can filter and export reports for account and reconciliation to CSV, PDF, and Excel, and pay out employee gratuities instantly, individually, or as a group bulk transfer with a single CSV file upload. We also integrate right into the POS. And we take a lot of pride in onboarding your staff for you. We realize that this is a brand new program. Going cashless is a new thought for your staff and as well for the management teams. So although the learning curve is very quick, most know how to work with an Excel spreadsheet, so it's very, very quick, and the onboarding takes less than 3 minutes. Once the cards are in their hands, we still like to remain present during the entire process to support you from start to finish. So all of your employees will be invited to a program, and once they get the SMS text message that we send out, your restaurant's go live date, we schedule it, and we get you going, and they download the app from the App Store or the Google Play. It's a free app. They set their new password, they scan a QR code on the back of the plastic debit card, and the staff member will go from a pending to registered inside your portal, and this just means that the employee is ready to accept gratuities inside your business. So some screenshots of the app, and we'll go through this quickly, but you can see as your staff members work at your restaurant, their account balances grow. You can see the overpriced $10 coffee at Starbucks that you bought in the morning. You can see your Uber to work. Some of the banking features there, you can find your ATM PIN. You can do a card-to-card transfer. You're able to e-transfer to your regular bank account should you want the money back in your account. POS spend is free and unlimited. You have bill pay, the ability to pay off your rent, your credit card, your phone bill, or a car payment in the app for free. And then the big one here is if you lose a do-bag full of cash in the back of a taxi or at a bar, good luck getting it back. But if you were to lose your plastic debit card with your tip money on it, you simply go into the app, suspend the card, and then go to your employer the next day and scan a QR code of a new plastic debit card, and the proxy number would repopulate to the new card. So why employees love a cashless solution? So checking your balance, paying the bills, sending the e-transfers in app, it's all very millennial, it's all very easy and smooth. The interface and the usability is really great. There's no monthly or annual fees for the restaurant or for the user, which is super important, right? We know that, yes, we can make a change onto something, but is it going to benefit and be great for my culture at my restaurant? There's no bank account or credit check required. A lot of people see the MasterCard logo in the bottom corner of the card and they think, oh, is that a credit card? No, we offer prepaid debit. You have better cash flow for your everyday and unexpected expenses, immediate access to their money, so meaning when their phone lights up at the end of their shift and their manager pays them out that due back, that they have immediate access to those funds. There's no holiday time lapse, there's no time to process, it's immediate. And then obviously avoiding the health and safety risks for the manager and for the staff member of handling the cash itself. And for the operators, the people that own the businesses and the management teams, why you are going to love a cashless solution. So it's quick and easy to deploy. We can do it in 1 to 2 business days, get your whole team up and running. Manage the tip distribution seamlessly with unparalleled customer service. We've got a 24-hour customer service live chat, as well as a 9 to 5 phone chat. And increasing employee satisfaction and retention and productivity. You know, when you know that you're going to go into your shift and you're going to be able to walk out with your tips at night and not have to wait for your due back, it's going to propel you to continue to work harder to get back into work. Secure cashless gratuity transactions between staff and the management. And then the big part for you guys is simplifying the accounting with a full reporting and reconciliation. And zero cost, guys. Zero cost except for card issuance. So we actually are in the process and have, you know, started with a great hospitality group in Earls, and we were starting from east to west, or west to east. So we've started from Vancouver and we're moving all the way to the East Coast, onboarding the entire company. And they did a return on investment for us. So now it's a great time to have that overview of the program and what it can do. So this is from them, not even from us. But as mentioned in the beginning, we're here to talk about how we can save money. So we'd like to talk and look at some real figures that were put together by one of our clients. So when Earls found out about Tipstoday, they were interested in going cashless, but wanted to do some work to see if it would really help and be worth it to make the switch. We asked them some questions about the business, and that sparked them to take a deep dive and do an analysis of their current operations. They discovered how much time their average location was spending on tip outs, and that information was used to compare it against how much time they will save by going cashless. They were able to convert that time into operating dollars, and these were some of their findings. They found that on average, their GMs were spending 1 hour every week, every 2 weeks, on going to get petty cash. That was about $750 in labor a year. When it came to tips, the GMs typically have to take out larger sums of cash to have it ready for due-backs. But what they noticed over the years is that those large sums were really susceptible to theft. And a few dollars here and there go missing because someone has taken a few bills from the pile. And at the end of the year, there's an average of, let's call it $2,000 or $1,950 in lost tips. They never, ever will get recovered. With the cashless method, the money goes from the business straight to the employee. There are no stray bills. It's complete clean lines, and nothing goes accounted for. When it comes to paying out the tips, counting the stuffing of the envelopes, etc. We've mentioned it before. It costs them about $3,380 in labor costs to handle that money physically. By switching to a digital payment method, they could reduce this time from a few hours once or twice a week to a few minutes that they don't mind doing every other day or even every day. Then there were the errors and discrepancies that they found that time spent finding and adjusting errors is costing them about $500 a year. By going cashless, it would drastically reduce the frequency of errors, but it would also make fixing issues a lot quicker. Instead of hunting down employees to return money that was given to them by accident, the payment can just be reversed digitally and instantly with Tipstoday. Lastly, they look at the money that they were spending on supplies, things like envelopes and coin rolls. This was totally in total about $577 a year. But because the tips are all put onto the employee's cards, there's not any more supply costs throughout the year. Once they've supplied each employee with their debit card, that is it. So altogether, the savings are in thousands. They expect a $5,378 return per location in year 1 and $6,681 per location in year 2 because the cost of onboarding has been paid in the first year. And that's a 76.64% return on investment in the first year and a 94%, almost 95% by the second year. So really, really great savings. And this is what they're looking for per location. So most restaurants, whether they have one location or they can relate to, you know, a larger hospitality group like the Earls and the Cactus Clubs of the world, they can all relate to these figures. And it's because of the cost savings, like what you see here, that they've decided to roll out Tipstoday to almost 10,000, 11,000 employees Canada-wide. I would like to introduce and invite Adriana from Earls. She was our first general manager that joined in the Port Coquitlam, Vancouver area. You just have to take that down. I can't. and so I'll ask a few questions about your experience. Hi, Adriana.
Hi, how are you?
Really great. So you've been on the program for a little while now. How long has it been?
It's been about 5 months.
Amazing. And you're currently accepting cash in your restaurants or no?
We are accepting cash as well, yeah.
Okay. Have you noticed that less customers are actually paying with cash and more is coming in digitally, would you say?
Yes, because most people, well, with COVID, they really don't want to touch the POS machine even with a tap. So they just choose to pay with the machine or with the stickers at the table. So we actually have seen 50% decrease in cash compared to last year.
So that kind of means that there's little to no cash coming in for the dewbacks. Earlier we spoke about how long a trip to the bank takes. How much time are the GMs saving by not going to the bank anymore?
Weekly about 2.5 to 3 hours, just by not having to go to the bank anymore.
Did you enjoy going to the bank?
No, it was an absolute nightmare. So ever since we reopened our restaurant after COVID, we actually ended up having to take about $10,000 to $15,000. With sometimes they just would not let you take cash. Sometimes it's how do I carry $15,000 from the bank to my car, and it is dangerous, and especially as a female. So it was really something that I was not looking forward to every Thursday.
No kidding. So aside from the time that you were saving, does eliminating the trip to the bank really matter to you?
Oh yeah. It really does, because right now we actually, if I need $12,000, we do request bi-weekly, and it takes me 5 minutes to request the money, and it takes about an hour to get money onto the account. That's the longest that has happened. And I'm in the restaurant. I'm able to impact things that are related to a guest or to my employees, instead of standing in line waiting for cash.
Doing all the admin stuff. So the trip to the bank is just one part of that process. There's also the counting, the labeling, the dispersing. We all know that. We talked about it earlier. How much time from an Earl's perspective would you say is truly saved?
Well, we're given a budget every month of labor hours that we can spend on admin tasks. And we also try to keep that number low and get things done as quickly as possible. So before rolling out my today card, we actually, our cash person used to do cash from 8 a.m. till 12 p.m., which was like 4 hours. And right now, even I did cash this morning, and it took me exactly 2 hours. So time went down by 50%.
When you actually sit down and do the tip outs using Tipstoday, how long does it take you now?
Within 5 minutes, I get the money onto the account of all the employees.
Wow. So have you found that because of the time you're saving, you're able to pay out tips more often, like every day now instead of once a week or something like that?
Yes, we actually pay our employees now every day. And we used to miss it before when we used to do cash, because there was just days that we just don't have enough cash on site. So employees would have to do a day or two, but now it's daily.
And was it easy to understand how to use the portal to do the tip outs?
It was extremely easy because of my knowledge with computers and cash. And the few who weren't as tech savvy, they were still able to catch on quick, because we actually did have quite a bit of demos from you guys to begin with, which was super helpful for me and for the rest of the locations that just got onboarded.
Yeah. And has there been any feedback from your fellow managers across the company about how to go cashless, and has that changed things for them?
Again, really what it changed is the fact that managers are freed up to do things on the floor. There is person not coming in daily to ask for tips, to open the safe, to get pulled from the floor and from the guests. So it's all positive surrounding the fact that our employees have their money available to them 24/7.
And the last question here I'm going to ask, which is the most important, is how important or what was your staff's perception of it right away, and what was the adoption rate, and how did they feel about it?
They had very little questions. We gave them information about the program and what to expect about 10 days in advance. Then when they were invited, they will receive a text message letting them know how to download the app, and it was easy from there. So yeah, they adjusted pretty easy to it, and all the feedback that I have been getting, it's positive.
So was there any resistance at all?
There was no, well, there was, I think that if this has happened before COVID, they might have been more resistant towards and wanted to keep their cash with them. But no, there was no resistance. They actually liked it.
Lovely. Thank you, Adriana. That was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for that segment. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're just going to look at the many restaurants that have come on board and some of the partners that we have. This is a snapshot of some of our partners, and I would like to pass the floor back to Marilyn.
Thanks, Dylan. That was great, super informative. So, snapshot of our office, where we are today. Some of us we're working mostly remotely, but we are a fintech company first and foremost. And so why this matters to you is because we manage your money. So we are a licensed money services business. We create financial products, and we have protocols with procedures in place that comply with all the rules and regulations of the bank. We're publicly traded. You can see our financials. We're fully transparent on CDAR. We're traded both on the CSE and also the Frankfurt exchanges. And so we're running a compliant and very buttoned down business, which is super important when you're managing other people's money. And we're super excited to have a great relationship with MasterCard. They love this program, and they're very, very supportive of us. And we know that because you are our clients and your money is so important to you, it's also important to us. We just want to make sure you know that security is a very high priority for us. So yeah, I'm happy that you joined us today, and I think we're going to open up to questions. Oh, actually, one more thing I wanted to add is that we feel, I don't want to say pain, that's too strong a word, but we've been bootstrapping. We know you're bootstrapping. We know times are tough. We're in this together. We're wearing your hat. You're wearing our hat. We're in this together. And we're a boutique, and I think it's important for you to know that our business is small, but we know how to find efficiencies. We know how to cut costs. We know how this pandemic is affecting us all, and going cashless is a really important priority. It's going to help reduce your costs in 2020. It'll save you time, and we're doing it for as little, well, it's essentially free, other, as Dylan mentioned, other than for the cost of the card. So your health, both physical health of your employees and also your financial health, is really, really important to us. And we love working with you guys. So thanks a lot. I'm going to open the floor up for questions.
Back to you, Roberto.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. Some really interesting insights. You know, I think one of the biggest things that stands out for me and should almost for everyone is, you know, time is money, right? So the increase in your increase in productivity and logistics and being able to do that, I think, is incredible. Couple of questions, you know, come in here. I think one of them that I have is that, you know, you touched on it a little bit, but, you know, the benefits from the employee perspective, you know, in terms of productivity and even morale. You want to just expand on that a little bit from, you know, some of the clients that you've been onboarding thus far?
So I think it's an obvious thing where, you know, you have most of the restaurant industry in Canada on serve checks for the last 6 months. and then the restaurant opens, and then they get told that they've got to shut it back down. So then they got to go back to the well with the Canadian government, and there's so much unknowns about their financial stability, whether they can make rent. When you know that you don't have to wait on that, due back for 5, maybe it's the difference of being evicted and not being evicted. And I don't mean to be that drastic, but we're in Toronto, we're still not open, right? We're still closed here in Toronto till November 14th. And everybody is trying their absolute hardest to figure out how to be resilient, how to, wipe the tears and be tough on the outside. But we all know that it's not as easy as it looks. And knowing that you can go to work and that $300 is the difference of getting that cash right away or having to wait makes all the difference, I think.
And also, I'd like to add too that what we've heard anecdotally is that the replacement of cash to a digital form of payment is adding a level of sophistication to that employee's life. It's easier to save. It's easy. We
manage their finances.
Yeah,
too.
we talked to one gal who said, I'm now treating it as a savings account, so to pay off my student loans, whereas before it was cash under my bed. So we're finding better time and attendance, better morale, and as Dylan mentioned, that immediacy to cash is super important.
And retention, Roberto. Like you're retaining your staff. Everybody's in flux right now. And if you know your employer is taking it seriously on the side of your money, you're more inclined to work harder and try to get through it with them than jump ship and figure out what you're going to do next.
Oh, perfect. In certain settings, employees will likely be against since cash is undeclared a lot. What are your thoughts about this as an industry wide?
So great question. Obviously, we're not advocating for the entire service industry to not do their taxes, but we understand the culture of servers. We understand that that's the benefit of serving. You get your cash and you get your tips, and your hourly are separate. We've designed the program in such a way that if you look at our cards, they say private banking on them, and we purposely do this, Roberto, because if you're going to put, if you're going to replace cash, the servers really have to love it, and they have to be feeling comfortable about, at the end of the year, is CRA going to come knocking down my door and say, hey, well, now that you have it on a card, does it track? So what we've done is we don't take their SIN, we don't take their address, we allow just the phone number to anchor the data, and then once they get paid, they have all the money on the debit card, but they still have the opportunity at the end of the year to do their taxes the right way, but on their terms.
We've had this question before. So we did get a professional opinion, a legal opinion on this, and it's still in draft form. We're just finalizing it, but I'll just give you a quote from it, from the law firm that has investigated this for us, and this is the conclusion. It is likely that the CRA would consider the tip to be a direct tip, one for which withholding is not necessary, and more likely than not, the court would not consider the tip to have been paid by the restaurant employee. So we are very confident that in this situation we would not be deemed to be interceding.
And especially with all your credit card tips coming in digitally, you have that 24-hour window to reissue them to the staff members before it becomes a controlled environment. So with the program, you essentially can be the server, print your read, staple your Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and debit slips together, go up to your closing manager and say, I'm owed $234 and this is my 5% tip out, or I'm in a pool and I work 12 hours and I'm owed this much money in a weighted pool. And the manager can open up their laptop, reconcile, say, yes, everything checks out, and issue that money because the digital money has come in and you're exporting it digitally right back to the server without that lag time of 24, 48, 56 hours, where now it's in a controlled environment. And we all know it's a gray area, right? Not everybody does it correctly still. We know the rules, but we still kind of do it the way we want to do it. Managers still touch money and that's not even allowed in technical terms. But with this, there is no cash. So no one's touching cash. And you can even appoint a lead server or a lead captain in your business that you trust, like a seasoned server, and you can make them a manager inside of your inside of the Tipstoday portal, and they can manage the tips for their team.
No, nice. What sort of reports does this provide for either controlled or uncontrolled tips?
Say that one more time.
What sort of reports does the back end provide as a manager, as an operator?
So you have a timestamp with the manager, the name of who moved money, what dollar amount, and at what time they moved it, and it's a rolling number on your dashboard. Every day you have the ability to attach that to your closing report. As you know, Roberto, you finish your day and you have to account for your wine inventory, your net revenue sales. You have to also account for how much money, when you batch your Moneris's, is going to balance with the tips going out. So that is all inside the portal. If you integrate, it talks to each other. If you'd like to do it manually, it's still very, very simple, but you can export it to CSV, Excel, and PDF, and then attach it to your closing report. So the opening managers and your investors and your owners of your business get it in the morning and they see that everything matches to the penny.
And the other great thing is we customize the reporting depending on how you report and how your P&Ls are structured. So if you've got, for example, a one franchise owner that owns a number of subsidiaries, we can report by subsidiary, by store, and so it's very customizable to help you run your business.
So another question here: how can money be reversed off the card due to discrepancies if the money is no longer on the card?
So there are two schools of thought on this. So if you have, you pay out $80 in tips, but you meant to pay out 70, you can suck $10 off the card if you catch that error. Now, in the case of the money actually being gone from the card and the server spent it, you would have to either eat that cost, or you'd have to go and say, the next $100 that you make, we're going to subtract $10 and issue you 90 because we know that we actually overpaid you last time, and then you've moved the money since off the card. So the only real finicky part there is if the server were to, it'd be their last day of service and they're quitting the next day, and then they suck the money off the card, and that happened to be the same day you made that mistake. But outside of that, there's always a way to get that money.
Perfect. And have you run into this, or have you experienced this, and how do you stop it? But how do you prevent fraud? I.e. the manager giving one employee more tips than maybe they've earned. Have you run into this before, and how you've handled it?
Yeah, that's a good question. We really haven't. We haven't run into overpayment. When you overpay with cash, good luck getting it back, right? If you put $200 in the due back envelope and you actually meant to put 100, the guy's not going to tell you put 200. He's just going to accept the 100 and say. And there's also permissions, right? You can create permissions for certain. You can create load limitations within the app. You can say you're allowed, Roberto, and you work at X restaurant. You're allowed to move this amount of money per day. And once you hit that number, you cannot move any more money without your superior allowing you or letting you continue to move money.
Got it. No, that's perfect. I'm just trying to see here if we have anything else here. If you're handling tips and they're not now considered control tips, and as a result, do you not have to deduct government taxes?
So you want to take this one?
Well, yes. So that was what I was referring to, is that we do have an expert opinion now, a legal opinion that positions this as a directive.
And if you do go like landing the control section, there's no one's telling anybody not. You can still T4 your tips. If it's your best business practice to T4 them, we're just exercising the payout. So we want to mirror what you're already doing and feel comfortable. Maybe your accounting team says start T4ing your tips now going forward. That is a conversation for internal in your business. We are just attaching that piece to be the digital side on the payout, whether that's $200 or $190 because you took $10 for T4.
Nope, makes sense. Taxes. And does an employee need the app, or can they access it through a web portal?
You can access it through a web portal with an email address. We understand we have restaurants that have people from all over the world, right, that come to Canada. They are working in our industry. We're the most transit industry in the world. And some people say, I don't have a smartphone. It's very, very uncommon. But if that happens, we have a workaround for an email address to anchor the data. Perfect.
You know what? I think that we've come to the end of the questions here. Before we take off, then, anything else that you two would like to add?
just honestly, thank you so much for the time. I can't imagine how busy everybody's lives have become trying to navigate through COVID. So the fact that you registered and took the time and joined this webinar means a lot to us. If you do have any questions or you want to do a personal demo with myself, you can email me at sales@mytodaycard.com. So sales@mytodaycard.com. And even if it's not for you and you just want to inquire and just get a little bit more information, we're happy to send you a Tipstoday deck and walk you through the frequently asked questions again, and explain the program in full detail on a one-on-one case-by-case basis.
Amazing. And we had one just come in under the buzzer here, and I want to get to it. I think it's important. Is it a daily lump sum being transferred from the restaurant bank account, or individual transfers?
That's an amazing question, and I'm happy that that was asked. So you EFT fund your wallet the first day, and think about your wallet that we built for you, the Tipstoday portal. Think about it like your safe downstairs in your office that you're replacing with a digital safe. So when we build that safe for you, you're going to EFT money to the safe and set your level watermark, your float. Once that's set, and like let's say it's $5,000 for the week that you need in tips, you put $5,000 in it, and you're going to work back from that on Monday and start paying people their tips throughout the week. And for example, if you have $5,000 and on Monday you pay out $500 in tips, a pre-authorized debit will hit your bank account, and on Tuesday morning we'll refresh $500 in tips from your business bank account back into the web portal. So it's a complete automated system. Once you fund and load the wallet, it just continues to punt the money back from the day before, so that you don't have to say, oh, I forgot to wire money to my Tipstoday portal, and now my staff can't get tips till tomorrow because the wire has to clear. The pre-authorized debit is an automated system, and it's completely free. Wires cost money, pre-authorized is free.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I think that is it for today, and we're just under the hour here, so we'll give everybody about 5 minutes back of their day. Listen, Dylan, Marilyn, thank you so much for your time. Really a pleasure sharing your expertise on this and going cashless and how it could save not only time, but we saw from the Earl's example how it can save a lot of money as well. Thank you guys, and I want to thank all the attendees who again took their time out today to be with us. This webinar is being recorded, so once again you will get a recording in the coming days. And if you need to reach out, there's the info for Dylan and Marilyn. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll see you once again in a few weeks for the next Restaurants Canada webinar. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you so much.